Hello, hey guys.
Hello. How's it going?
We're here with an exciting contact center talks. Got a couple guys in the industry that I've known a very long time and doing some really good stuff. So I thought this episode is really going to be based around remote operations, remote training, remote hiring, all those things that companies prior to the pandemic might not even have thought about. And then now it's squarely hitting them in the mouth. So do a quick introduction. We have Eric Sims with Leading Edge Connections, John Giuliano, Leading Edge Connections. They're the founders, right? They started this BPO, and going to kind of dive into a little bit here and just kind of get to know you guys. And really something I never asked you is, how did you both were kind of brick and mortar guys and you've been in the call center industry for a while. How'd you get together? How'd you come up with this, remote BPO? Because you guys did it before the pandemic. So It's almost like trailblazers. Why did you go down that? And I'll just toss it up for either one of you. Just kind of how did this, process start?
Yeah, I mean, John, you want me to take it or you want to take it?
Yeah, you can take it. I'll add some color.
Yeah, you're correct. So John and I were both brick and mortar guys for, 15 years each or somewhere roughly around there. And we actually met working for the same company. We were just in two different regions. And so we became friends. I think we're both like-minded in that sense. We just connected, it wasn't just work. It was like, hey, we had some really great sideline conversations about life and family and everything from religion to politics and everything else, right? You kind of talk about your buddies, and we won't go into those today. But and we both ended up leaving that organization, but we stayed in touch, it was a friendship where we would check in with each other periodically, and if we were changing companies or changing roles or just whatever, have some conversations. And I think it was the conversation probably started back when we were working together. We just didn't realize it, right? Like you talk about the business quite a bit and the things that you see where there's opportunities and the challenges you face inside some environments where maybe there's resistance to certain changes and evolutions that you kind of pick up on. But I think where John and I both had an enormous amount of agreement was in that Groundhog's Day conversation that's gone on in call centers for a long time, which is, people hire call centers for three reasons: talent, techniques, and technologies, right? Yeah. And when you're constantly in conversations that all hinge on those three things and an inability to meet the service requirements of the clients that you're bringing on, we both just got frustrated, after a long time of like, hey, listen, we see an angle where this could be alleviated. I don't know that there's any permanent great fix, right? But there are solutions. And when you're talking about attrition and talent and financial modeling, right? And all those kind of go together. When you look at a financial model, it drives a lot of the talent you're able to acquire or go after or keep. And the hindrances within that financial model typically tied back to real estate, right? I mean, you can't turn around and say, hey, Mr. Client, sorry, my real estate I want is really expensive, so I'm going to charge you $20 more an hour than I was before. They're going to say, forget you, and then you'll have a piece of real estate with no business. Right. So everybody was locked in, and we saw a real opportunity that said, hey, if you just get rid of some of this stuff or be open to change some of this stuff, it really will alter the business. And a lot of that was the virtualization of the business. And there was just that old folklore in the business of it won't work. How do you manage it? People won't do what they're supposed to do. We already have enough trouble tracking people in the center. God knows what's going to happen if you let them loose in public. And we just looked at it and said, yeah, that's true if you're talking about apples to apples, but we're not talking apples to apples. We're talking apples and oranges, because once you change the financial model, you can pay people more. You can go find people who are the right fit for the position versus the person that's closest to the building that'll take the money.
Yeah.
And then that mitigates a lot of your risk from a fraud and theft issue. And there was crime reports already out that had been done for years with live ops on that Jon and I studied and looked at and said, well, here's some of the statistical proof of what we thought was going on is that, hey, there's a 300% reduction in fraud. That's a good thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
And if we open up our geo footprint, then, hey, we've got the ability to go hire the people that we want to hire for whatever vendor that we want to be doing work for. So that was kind of the crux of it. We just said this is a solution that we're passionate about. It was a neat conversation. And Jon, maybe you want to share with them a little about the actual conversation we had. I think it's really powerful how we came up with the concept.
Yeah. So to add some more color to that, Eric and I, we would talk periodically, and the conversations were pretty much the same every time. It was, I work for X BPO or X contact center or X company, and this is what's going on. And I can't believe they're still operating like this. And we're still experiencing these problems, and et cetera, et cetera. And then we came to the realization every time we'd switch organizations, the problem stayed the same. It was just with a different brand on it, right? Or a different logo. So as we're talking, we came to the conclusion of we can continue to vent about it, or we can do something to change it. And that's how Leading Edge was born. We decided that, we've experienced the same challenges. We've experienced the same pain points that every BPO has, which is the high attrition, the non-transparency with their partners or their clients, the dog and pony show of headcounts and budgets and things like that, that we knew that there was a better way of doing this. And there was a more transparent way to partner with our clients to say, we're going to be a true extension of your brand, as opposed to, us trying to, keep everything behind the veil, so to speak.
Yeah. So neither one of you, did either one of you run a virtual team or a remote team or anything at your current positions you were? Or did you have this experience, or did you just build this thing from an idea?
Jon could speak for his experience with it. We did a very small test at a company I was at two companies previous to us starting LEC. And it was literally that we begged, and my boss at the time begged the owner, can we please try this? Almost hands and knees, because there was so much resistance. And They finally gave in and said yes. We put a few people as a small test. It proved out, and it wasn't a full remote from a standpoint of, hey, you can hire anybody anywhere. It was hey, they don't have to be in the office. You can hire them, and we were in Tampa. You can hire them in Tampa. They don't have to come into the office. But it was still a very locked down, kind of narrow-minded approach. But it was a test, and it tested very well. All of that group performed highly better than the rest of the group that was internal. The performance was better. The attendance was better. The attrition was less. Everything proved out kind of like we thought. And then they said, never mind, bring them back into the building, which is kind of like what a lot of them are doing now, even after COVID, when they did the whole send people home to work.
Yeah.
They're all bringing them back in. So for us, it's like, hey, I knew it would work conceptually. I had a little bit of a test there. I think Jon had tested some stuff too. But that was the big piece for us, was like, listen, it's not rocket science. Like for me, from a hiring standpoint, I took a piece of notebook paper and jokingly put a dot in the middle of it, said, here's a building. Are there more good people in a 3-mile radius of a crappy building in a crummy part of town, or are there more good people in the continental United States? And I didn't have to do any research past that. I pretty much knew at that point in time, mathematically, there's more people that are great in the United States. And then when you start configuring in and calculating in things like minimum wage rates and pay rates and things like that are in different states and in different areas, it may be more advantageous to hire in, or places where there's a higher concentration of certain types of individuals that are minded certain ways. Hey, sure. It's more advantageous to recruit in those areas. But at the end of the day, the nuts and bolts of it was we can go find better people faster. And that's always been a challenge within the contact center world. And if we find better people who are higher in business tenure, higher in education. Nothing against that. I'm not the most adamant person about education, but if you can find those two things further along in life with business experience, will that positively impact the attrition and performance? And the answer was yes, it will.
So awesome. I think I was actually doing a test as well, where the company I worked for, we were really, I guess you would say, niche. So it was fundraising. It was on a certain side of the aisle. Yeah. So we had multiple call centers, but like you guys, these call centers were in smaller towns. They've been there for 5, 6, 7, 10 years. Yep. And I was at the point where I was just churning over rehires, right?
Yeah. Or they're walking across the parking lot for 25 cents more an hour to the call center that's literally sharing a food truck with you in the parking lot.
Exactly. And so here was my challenge. So I said, hey, I'm going to do this. And I got the sign off, and technology kind of just got to the point where you could have hosted cloud environments to where you could do that. Because prior to hosted in cloud, it would have been hard. Premise-based solutions, you have all the technology within the call center. So here's some of the challenges I ran into. So I said, I'm going to create this remote team. I'm going to hire throughout the US. I started putting the things together. Now, let's talk about onboarding. Let's talk about, bringing them in, training them, getting them up to speed. Did you guys run into any challenges compared to how you do it in a brick and mortar?
No, everything's gone perfect since we started the company.
No issues at all.
Yeah. I mean, Jon I'll let Jon speak to that first.
Yeah.
I'll chime in and let him take that.
Yeah. So, in the beginning, it was definitely a struggle, right? We're trying to find ourselves and find our legs and figure out what the best process was and perfect it. But, when you're first starting something new, you're always going to stumble a little bit. And we definitely stumbled. We learned very quick that we need to stress test the individual's technology before bringing them on, put them through a pretty, solid onboarding checklist that's, inclusive of having them play in a sandbox and test their internet connections, et cetera, et cetera. Once we refined that process, things became a heck of a lot smoother. Going into training, we basically took a lot of the positives that we saw in the contact center, in the brick and mortar space, which weren't that many, but we took some of those positives, which were, I have to say it. I mean,
we're not huge fans of brick and mortar. Can you tell?
Yeah. So we took a lot of the positives, like gamification inside of the classroom, and creating kind of our own subculture within the training group. So we use technology to allow our team to work together and kind of live together and play together in this virtual space. So it's not just for LEC, but it allows them to post different things about their personal lives and get to know each other personally. Like we have game rooms and movie rooms and things like that where everybody can kind of come together, which is kind of cool and neat.
That's awesome, because I think where I feel the feedback I get from companies that were brick and mortar, and then they decided, hey, the pandemic hit, I got to send people home in order to save my business. They're still struggling with trying to, and they're kind of staying hybrid, but they're struggling with that culture part of it, right? They're struggling with how do they hire people in this remote environment, this hybrid environment, but plug in. And so it sounds like, Jon, you guys are using some technology to help kind of bridge some of that, create that, because we all know as people that were in brick and mortar, you get a lot of that rah. You get a lot of that call center buzz and that togetherness of accomplishing some task. And it sounds like there's technology that can help bridge some of that.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Jon.
Yeah. So we also use like some technology to create a kind of a virtual call calibration room, which is really unique, right? Like in center, in order to like get a call monitored or listen to or get coaching, you have to be pulled into a separate coaching room, and who knows if the rooms are available, and you have to wait in line, all that stuff, right? We completely eliminated that. So if you want to call coaching or if you want some feedback from your supervisor, you could just go into the calibration room. Your supervisor's there. They let you in. And now you have this interaction where we can listen to a call together. We can role play. We can go through the sandbox, maybe it's a systems training or whatever it may be. So it allows access, direct access, better direct access from the agent to the soup, which really shortens that time to competency gap that you see elongated in a brick and mortar.
Yeah.
So traditionally, you're looking at 120, let's call it 120 days for the average time to competency. Our average time to competency for agents are anywhere between 45 and 60 days. So
you're cutting that. You're actually cutting that down versus what I hear is it's longer.
Right.
No,
it doesn't have to be.
So here's and you said something, Mike, that's really important, and it goes back to the initial change, and there is a major difference in sending people home to work and designing a business that's work from home, or what we call work from anywhere, because eventually what our goal is to have people that can work from wherever the hell they want to. If they want to be on a mountaintop, that's what, they're able to do that with some type of gig work or whatever they want to do. But there's a major difference there. And so typically in the contact center world, even in the brick and mortars, we've done a very poor job historically of building models with the agent experience in mind. We focus on customer experience. We focus on, and on top of agent experience, I'll say management experience too, like supervisors and team leads and quality assurance people. Like, what's their experience like? So with that mindset is how we've really built LEC. We try to look at it and say, okay, we're going to be bringing in a different type of person, because the same type of person that would be successful in this position in a brick and mortar call center may not be successful in a design for work at home or work anywhere model. A supervisor doesn't, to your point, does not have the ability to run up and down the aisle like they used to and slap people on the back of the head and high five people and yank them in from smoke breaks or whatever it is that they needed to do at those point in times, and throw hacky sacks and squishy balls and all that around at them. But when you hire a different type of person, the need for that goes down because their productivity level is naturally higher anyway, right? So then the management style becomes far more mature, far more analytical, and far more interactive and communicative in a different way. So you've got to start with, what does that whole experience need to look like, and how does that communication need to take place? And John's team's done a great job with the stuff he mentioned, like just building these different environments, because people are a product of their environment, right? Mm-hmm. So if you build the right environment virtually, right, for them to get into, then their productivity rate should naturally go up. Their professionalism should naturally go up. They should exist in those realms. Now, there's some pre-qualifications, as we talked about, that go into that when you're hiring and when you're recruiting. But I'd say, where did we fail at the beginning? Going back to your question, we didn't know, and we found out very quickly that the people that we thought would be highly successful as a supervisor or a team lead or a workforce management person or something like that was not necessarily the same person we used to hire when we ran brick and mortar centers. So we had to evolve our ideal employee persona, right, for those positions, and say, okay, what does this need to be altered to? And once we did that, we've seen a lot of stuff just improve.
Without giving away like the secret sauce, what are some of those techniques or skill sets that somebody in a remote environment may need versus somebody that you would hire in a brick and mortar?
Yeah. I mean, I'll go first with this, John, if you want me to, but I don't think I'm giving away the secret sauce with this. I think I just mentioned one of them. I think holistically what we've seen is people need to be far more analytical. Okay. Historically in the call center, you normally had one guy that was analytical and he ran reporting and looked at that stuff. The other people were rah-rah people. They ran around the aisles and allowed their physical energy to influence people. So that was a way for them to overcome that shortcoming of understanding the business and understanding the levers that need to be pulled to drive the business. And what happens when you get a person like what we're talking about in this environment is your ratios also change. You're able to manage more people more effectively.
Yeah, that was one question I was going to have is at least I came up as a agent, supervisor, coach, center manager, regional. And one thing was time management as a supervisor running a team. Yeah. Like that was a challenge because, we had a 1-to-12 ratio. We needed to get an evaluation done on each person. It would be lunch and I'd have 2 evaluations done because I'm running a raffle. I'm having to discipline somebody. I get caught here, caught there. So assuming the training and actual in the weeds development time has to increase in your environment.
Yeah. It does. I
Yeah.
mean, there's not all that. And John, you can speak more specifically to this, but the short answer is there's not all that wasted time. You don't have people coming down the aisle to waste your time because they want to get out of their chair for 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, we eliminated the executive hallway that you would traditionally see in the brick and mortar, where everybody just kind of sits around and waits for somebody's door to open to go in and have a 30-minute conversation. That's somewhat meaningless, right?
So is it a one? So normally, like in a sales environment, maybe it's a 1 to 12. In a customer service, it may be 1 to 15, 1 to 20. So are you seeing it now in your world that your supervisors can get more agents? Can they manage more people at one time versus kind of those ratios that we had?
Yeah. So what we do, which is another differentiator, is when we take on a partner and we work with them, we build out kind of what that looks like. So depending on the complexity of that relationship, that dictates what the ratios will be, right? Some clients have a much higher lift, which would shorten that ratio. But on average, it's 1 to 20, 1 to 25 sometimes.
Okay.
We do have some that are traditionally 1 to 12, 1 to 10. But it's really it depends on the partner need.
But I think what I'll point out, what I've noted with John's operational team, Mike, is that, let's be honest, when we all were in the center and we had teams running 1 to 12, 1 to 15, 1 to 18, they weren't effectively running it. They were being run by it. Correct. Right? There were very few supervisors, and I worked with a lot of great guys and a lot of great girls that were fantastic supervisors that were constantly overwhelmed. So I think the other thing is the ratios spread a little bit differently, but the effectiveness rate, when you look at the ability of a manager's ability to complete their task, effectively coach and train and develop their team, lead, reinvest in themselves, the things that we need them to do, right? There's a higher propensity for that in our environment than we've seen in any other environment that we've been in. And there may be another one that's better. I haven't seen it yet, but it's definitely a major improvement.
So just the statistics and stuff that I see, just to pivot a little bit, it sounds like, in my experience, agents want to work from home. It's almost like having them come back to the brick and mortar is this hurdle now that you'd have to overcome to hire somebody. Yeah. So now that you have this pool of people, you got your target of really the type of person you're looking for. How is the competition right now with all these places wanting to put people at home and so on and so forth? Did that toughen it a little? Did it create a little bit more competition on your end or before COVID, or do you still see there's a lot of greenfield out there?
Yeah, it's definitely more difficult than it was pre-COVID. I think for a couple of reasons. I don't have the answer to the second one. First one being there are more people in the remote environment than there were before, right? Whether they're good at it or not is irrelevant. They're out there. The second piece being there's just a shortage in the workspace. If you're looking at anything from McDonald's to, senior level positions at large other corporations in technology, everybody's hunting for people. So, I was jokingly saying the other day, I don't know if these people got all abducted by aliens or what happened, but there seems to be a lot of people missing. And so I think that's affecting the challenge around recruiting as well. We've still, in my opinion, we still do a very good job of that.
Yeah, I'd like to add the fact that with the competition coming up in terms of working remote, working at a company that wasn't designed to do work from home will provide a really poor experience to the employee. So some employees or some individuals that would consider work at home that got into work at home due to COVID hated the experience with other organizations, right? Because, it wasn't set up properly. It was, just here, take a box with your computer and go set it up at home and good luck.
Right.
So it really provided a really poor experience for a lot of these employees. So as we're bringing people in and talking to them, they're like, well, I've tried work at home before. I didn't really like it. Well, you can't really, to Eric's point, you can't compare apples to apples. It's not.
Right.
So if you're working with a company that's designed to work from home, the experience is completely different.
I was thinking about that. We've all been in good call centers. We've all been in bad call centers. Yeah. And so just because they worked in a call center, you obviously don't want them to judge you based on that experience.
Correct.
So in your world, it may be a benefit that these people are going to some of these places that are just not set up. They're really running a remote internal operation. So they don't have the technology that you talked about, Jon. They don't have the more hand-holding coaching type process that Eric brought up. It's more, judge us based on how we have set up the operations, and you guys created this remote company for a lot of reasons that you laid out. And so I'm assuming that you may be getting a benefit from that, from those poor experiences in those places that might not be put together as a remote company versus they have this hybrid team, and out of necessity they had to have this team at home.
Right. And everything that you just outlined plays into our sub 5% annualized attrition rate.
Okay.
And sub 5% in this industry is unheard of.
If you would have told me that, I'd have been like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. You've been in the game for over 20 years. We all been in the game for over 20 years. Never once have we seen numbers like that. Usually you look at that as like a weekly benchmark, right? But we've done a real bang up job in terms of making sure we put the right person in the right seat, make sure that we take care of them. We check in, periodically with different surveys and CSATs or ESATs, as we like to call them. And we, actually take that feedback and do something with it, as opposed to just, shoving it inside of a file cabinet somewhere for it to disappear. So,
sure.
Yeah.
So now you got the company together. You guys had this great idea. You formed this company, Leading Edge Connections. You're, fully remote. You're built on this remote environment. So what's the future look like? What is the next stepping stone? What is the next remote? I know I've heard you guys kind of talk about metaverse and some of this other stuff. What do you think the next leap is?
I think that the evolution of digital currency, NFTs, the metaverse, this kind of virtual world that's opening up to everybody, will again allow for us to alter the model. And what I mean by that is that as communication continues to change and the form in which people prefer to communicate change, the call center will have to evolve with that. And I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I wish I did. I'd go ahead and build it out, but we probably wouldn't be able to do anything with it anyway because nobody's ready for it. But I think that virtual world is the answer. Like, I think, we were looking at stuff the other day with just digital showrooms for sales, right? Where people can come in and they are, instead of a sales guy calling you on a phone, which there's nothing wrong with. We do a lot of that still today, but over time, that's going to be more and more and more altered, right? Or adjusted. These digital sales rooms or digital customer service rooms and places that people can go. I mean, it's going to be different. And that's our focus right now, is what is that next iteration? Jon and I promised each other we would hold each other accountable when we started the business, that the moment one of us started carrying around the flag that we hated seeing being carried around previously in our business, which was the old, this is the way we've always done it, this is the way we do it, the death rattle of any business, right? That he would take me out in the woods and shoot me. So, and I promised to do the same to him, only to fly him down to Florida first, because I won't go to Buffalo. But I think for us, that's it, is being really open-minded and really staying on the edge. We stay involved with a lot of tech groups. We're involved with a lot of entrepreneurial groups with startups. The big part of that is for us to just look for and constantly be talking about what's the next iteration. And right now, Jon's team's leveraging what we call digitally intelligent sales agents right now on campaigns. And so that's leading edge for us, right? And not a lot of people are doing that. These are artificially intelligent outbound sales agents. So it's pretty cool stuff. And, that's the stuff that we get jazzed about, is like, hey, we got this, but this, what got us here today won't get us there tomorrow. It's a fast moving, fast paced world.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I guess a couple other things is when you kind of look at the remote model, I'm assuming you guys compete still against traditional BPOs. You're competing against, places that are brick and mortar, so on and so forth. Are clients still reluctant to do remote agents? Are they still, at that point where you have to convince them or sell them of this opportunity? What's the main hurdles you're still trying to overcome?
So it depends on the type of client. And what I mean by that is when you look at the RFP world, the RFP world is still very anchored in the old model because the forms you fill out and the boxes they want you to check are still very anchored in that model. They have not evolved those as far along. They've evolved them some, but not as far along. When you look at the client model, just if you're looking at like an advertising or referral or reference type of interaction, far more adaptive because people are so much more used to a SaaS model than they used to be of interacting with organizations and cloud-based organizations. It's allowed for us to really be progressive in how we contract, how we interact, and how we recruit different clients, from everything from the actual work we're doing to the relationship itself.
Yeah. So speaking of the work, where do you guys put yourself? What verticals is Leading Edge Connection? What are your verticals? Where do you have your sweet spot? When we say BPO, that means whatever, right?
Everything, right? And to your question about the challenge with clients, I think that the biggest challenge that we face, and Jon sees this when he comes into, so Jon and I are both always involved in the acquisition process. He runs operations, but he's always involved in the acquisition process. Another thing that we decided to do that wasn't done previously in organizations was, hey, why don't we ask operations how they think they could service this client if we bring them on?
Not afterwards, not figure it out, guys.
Instead of just sending them down the hallway and go, here's your new client. And they're like, well, wait a minute, what? So we're heavily collaborative in that effort together. And so I think, and Jon, I don't know if you want to chime in on this, but I think, well, go ahead, Jon.
Yeah, to answer your question, our client mix, we're really diversified, right? So we spend a lot of time working with SaaS companies, a lot of time with startups, but we also have the big Fortune 50s, right? Your traditional contact center stuff. We play inside of CX, sales, tech support, your traditional work, but we do it differently. It's hard to explain to somebody who's been in the industry for so long because they're so used to saying, okay, well, great, you have telesales reps, you have customer service reps, right? We look at ourselves as a sales and customer experience transformation company. So we provide that white glove service, that high end, that high level, all the way from voice of the customer, all the way through to, customer journeys or customer pathing, really everything in between. So we're not just that traditional call center where we have, 1,000 seats sitting in a building. We really want to work with you on every facet of your business.
Okay. So,
I mean, I would chime in on that just real quick, Mike, and say it's one of our biggest pushes when we meet with people is to help. We want to make sure they understand our core values, but who we are. And that transformation piece is really important, is that we want to make sure that we position a solution that's right for their business, not just for today, but over the next several years, versus just a solution we have or have had in the past, right? Like telesales, when you look at anything, like customer service, sales, full cycle sales, technical support, whatever it may be that we're doing. Yeah, there's ways we existingly do that today, but it may not work for the organization we're talking to. So we go in and say, okay, what needs to take place here? Like, how do we not only solve your problem, but enhance the entire experience? And in doing that, how do we leverage what we existingly do with other organizations and those best practices and technologies and techniques that we use and custom build something that's going to actually work for you and your organization? And that's one thing that I think has really impressed a lot of the clients that we've brought on. Whereas traditionally there was kind of here's what we do, it's plug and play, take it or leave it type thing. And some larger clients like that. I mean, if you're talking to like a T-Mobile or Verizon, they really don't care. This is take it or leave it, right? But a lot of the upcoming younger companies that have younger CEOs and they've got massive growth cycles and huge amounts of communication that are going on are far more progressive in how they want to connect with their outsourced partner. And they're far more collaborative than we've seen historically in that environment. And we've enjoyed that immensely because we've been able to learn and have fun and really get to know people and what I'll call become friends with a lot of the clients that we have. Like there's a lot of great personal relationships we develop. And our core goal is to help people and help organizations gain and retain customers, right? Like that's our mission, is to help people grow their businesses and be successful. And then when we align with people properly, we're able to do that.
And that sounds great, but I know the challenges behind that, right? So you sit down with the client and they say, hey, we'd like you to do this, connect with this CRM, run through this process. Oh, by the way,
Yep.
you need X, Y, and Z. So how do you guys stay up on top of that? Like, so it sounds like to me, you're not just looking for those opportunities that say, here's your script, here's your goal. We're going to load it up on the dialer. They're going to receive these inbound calls. Follow the flow. Have a good day. You're more looking at the opportunities that say, hey, maybe we don't even traditionally farm this out. Maybe we don't even use this. We may want to hire you versus hiring internal. We don't want to hire 50 sales reps or SDRs or whatever. We want to hire you guys. Now, in my world, that opens up a lot of challenges because now you're working within a lot of core systems within that company. You may have to connect those pieces. How do you make that work? How do you stay on top of that?
So let me make sure we make something clear. We are not opposed to any large corporations that want to hire us and tell us what to do. We're not opposed to that. What we found is that because of our positioning in the marketplace, we found more customers that we call are on the grow and evolving very quickly. And with the virtualization and stuff, I think that's made us more attractive because we can help them with that piece as well. So I think back to your question, I think that the overcoming of that challenge of them dictating what it is, or us having to work on numerous platforms, we made that mistake. There was at one point in time where we went into the meetings and we were like, we don't care. You tell us what you want us to do. We'll use whatever platform you need us to. And we really were genuine in saying that. We thought we could. And what we found was, man, this is a logistical nightmare, right? Because now we've got 50 agents over here, 20 agents over here, 10 agents over here. And so that was part of the reason we wanted to partner with 𝗦𝗶𝗺𝗀 with you guys, was we wanted to have a premier platform that we could take to people and say, yeah, you've got yours, but ours is way better anyway, right? In a really nutshell way of saying it, and say, here's all the reasons why you should leverage this platform is we're ahead of the curve. We've got what you're already looking for. It's already sitting here. We already know how to use it. And so we've begun to see more and more clients be open to saying, okay, you know what, let's move in that direction. We may still sit on a CRM or two that are theirs or an ERP or an order processing platform, which is necessary. You do that in any center. But we've tried to pull as much of that technology back in so that we can do what we want to do, which is have Jon's team be subject matter experts, right? And they can work on focusing on dialing in and giving people phenomenal reporting and great information back to help them better run their business on the other side, not just the business they're interacting with us, but those things that we've always been asked for in the contact center. I need information back to give to marketing. I need information back to give to our internal operations team. We need ideas and fresh takes on what's going on these phone calls, and our teams can focus on that and actually deliver quantitative information that helps them run their business better. So it's a huge value add. His team's done a phenomenal job with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys hit the right time, right place, right type of business model, because you, as well as I know, 5, 6, 7, even 10 years ago, there's none of this virtual. There's none of this connecting to CRMs. There's not even cloud-based dialing systems and text messaging and omni-channel and so on and so forth. Yep. So I think that piece was good time. Now let's talk omni-channel. Let's kind of go into what I consider the future, which is understanding what is the preferred method of communication, right? Yep. So I'm guessing a lot of these clients that you're working with, they're not giving you a list to load up in the dialer and just pound on people. They're saying, hey, we need to be able to communicate with this, or even better is, how can you guide us in the best way to communicate? So when I look at omni-channel and I work with clients, it's still hard for clients to be able to utilize more than just inbound, outbound dialing. They still are trying to utilize chat a little bit. They're trying to, figure out SMS, so on and so forth. But I think, as we know, if you have any kids or you have anybody that's in a younger generation, phone calls are going away at some point. The way that we communicate, not going away, but they're going to be diminished.
The way that we know them today will be going away.
Yeah.
Right? There will be a different version. I mean, look at us right now. This used to be what they called a conference call, right? Where you sat in a room and everybody spent the first 30 minutes trying to figure out who was on, hit mute, please stop, hang up, and now we all get on Zoom calls like it's nothing, right? And so I think telephone calls are going to make that migration to something different here and very soon as well.
Do you see clients asking for that? Are they wanting to move in that direction? Are they wanting to go into the digital direction? Are they wanting to figure out how can I understand what is a preferred method to reach out to my clients?
Yeah, we get a lot of questions that are like, what are you seeing on what are your other partners doing that we're not doing, which is unique, right, in our industry. Typically that question never really came up. We also have many more conversations with the marketing team that says, okay, we're going to be launching social media ads that are going to, start sparking Facebook messages or WhatsApp messages or whatever it is. So, we want to pivot away from the phone, head more towards social media, head towards SMS or chat or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, I mean, the company can want to do whatever it wants to do. But if the customer doesn't want to engage that way, you have to lean into what they want, right?
Sure.
Yep. I think it's just keeping a pulse of what the customer experience needs to be like, whether it's in sales, CS, or tech support, or whatever it may be. We just have to keep that in the back of our mind that we can't tarnish the overall experience of the consumer.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's where I kind of have been beating the preferred method of communication. We've all done it to where we want to just, log in, be able to take care of something really easy on the chat. And then it escalates into a phone call. 45 minutes later, we've already been transferred to 3 different departments.
That's right.
That's the piece that I think companies aren't there yet. I mean, I was just on the phone with Delta 2 days ago, and, I'm not bashing on Delta, but it was 45 minutes to learn how to change a flight. I mean, it was mind numbing. And I was in queue on hold for 22 minutes.
Yeah.
So you guys should call Delta up. You should call Delta and tell them you have this great operations and maybe you can get in there. But anyways, that's, I think, the frustration of the customer is saying, hey, we have texting, we have email, we have social media, we have Facebook, we have Snapchat, but I'm still on hold for 30 minutes.
Correct.
Yeah. I think Jon's team, and as an example, we had a client come on that had astronomical hold times and astronomical drop calls, which was causing, to the first call resolution, you got people calling multiple times and things like that. So I think one of the things that we were able to work with them on, because they came with the question, like, what do we need to do? We don't know. Like, is it a staffing issue? Is it this? Is it that? And the answer was, it's a combination of things. But the first thing you've got to look at is, like, what does the consumer want, right? And try to best guess or educated guess that. And his team was able to go back in and do a number of things, like alter the IVR, right? And put some automated prompts in there and automated answers and FAQ type stuff with those people there. Put some and give them feedback. Put some online website-based or site-based FAQs or answers or chat abilities, right? So then you're actually interacting with people or giving people the choice to take their preferred method of communication, get that done, and then look for ways to simplify that. I mean, I'll go back to it. Like, you think it's bad for the consumer as a call center person, right? I obviously care about the consumer, but how freaking bad is it for the person on the other end of the phone that's been on 9,000 phone calls all day long because you can't staff properly, you can't automate properly, you can't manage and execute properly, and then you wonder why your attrition's through the roof. Well, it's through the roof because you've turned your call center customer care agent into a human punching bag for 8 hours a day. How long is anybody going to take that, right? I mean, you're gonna, no matter how good they are, you're gonna lose them.
Well, I think you kind of, and you reiterated your topic, is looking at it at the agent's perspective. And that's completely opposite of the way the industry's been ran for a long time. And I think you guys are doing something very unique in that footprint. I think it's the reason why, Jon, you said you're under 5% attrition rate. I think it's going to be the way that you retain and keep talent, is understanding through technology, understanding through hiring practices, understanding through environment and culture. How do we create a better environment for our product, which is our people? In a call center, your product are your agents. Without them, you don't have a call center.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we say that all the time. Like our customer is really the next person that's working with us. For our supervisor, their customers are the agents. Yep. So if they're not getting a great customer/agent experience, how in the hell are those people going to go create a great experience for the people on the phone? Like you can't, it's not going to happen. There's very few people that can go through hell and turn around and deliver heaven. Right. And that's what we ask people to do historically in this business. It doesn't work. Not in volume.
It's awesome. And it's very refreshing. And I think you guys are ahead of the curve when it comes to that, and understanding that the agents at some level is the lifeblood of your company and your clients, experience and your client's company. So anyways, anybody that needs to get out, they can reach out to you guys. They can, get a hold of you. Where can we get a hold of you? Are you still open to new clients? Like, let us know.
Yeah. Let me give you John's Tinder profile.
There you go.
They can email us. I mean, and call. I mean, most of our information is posted everywhere. We get calls and stuff all the time, but they can email Jon at 𝗔𝗴𝗲𝗺@𝗖𝗲𝗺𝗺.com, and there's a 𝗖𝗂𝗹𝗁𝗺𝗀𝗺.com.
Okay.
Or me at 𝗔𝗴𝗲𝗺𝗁𝗺, SIMS, 1M. I spell it the right way, at 𝗖𝗂𝗹𝗺𝗀.com. Those are the two fastest ways to get in touch with us.
Okay. Well, I see you guys flying all over the place. You were in Dallas, you were in somewhere else, you were in California. So it looks like the company's growing. It looks like, based on our conversation today, that you're still ahead of the curve, leading edge. Ha ha ha. But anyways, I appreciate your friendship and your partnership, and I'm excited to see how your company keeps growing.
We're the same, Mike. We love working with you and your team.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike.